Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's conference on our ICD 10 changes for 2019. We have a lot to go over today. This is double the amount of slides I usually have for an audience this long. So we're going to move right along today and talk about the changes. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to go over today. The first thing we want to talk about are the guideline changes. So depending on your manual, there are official guidelines and coding conventions for the ICD-10-CM. And so there are some changes related. When you get your book, sometimes they're in the very front of the book, sometimes they're in the very back of the book. It just depends on the publisher. If you're not aware, the World Health Organization is the one that basically manages ICD-10. The CM that we use is clinical modifications, and that's the United States version. And so CMS and World Health Organization work together to maintain the ICD-10-CM. But it is not copyrighted like your CPT manual is. Your CPT manual is created by the AMA, and they have a copyright to it. So that's why no matter what kind of CPT book you get, unless you're getting like an expert book, which is written by a specific publisher, you get the same book. Where ICD-10, the books can be a little bit different depending on who you're getting it from. So the coding conventions and official guidelines can either be in the front or the back or maybe in the middle. I don't know. It depends on the publisher. So you can look for those there. But so let's go ahead and just take a look at a couple of the things that are changing for this year. So one of the things that have changed in the guidelines is the fact that currently, until October 1st, the coding assignment of diagnosis codes is only to be taken when you're looking at documentation. It's only been to be taken from the provider that's legally accountable for the diagnosis. So for instance, you can see the 5 things they have listed here. So currently, whoever is billing for the service is the one that has to document these 5 things in order for you to be able to code that as an ICD-10 code. Beginning October 1st, these 5 things can be documented by someone else. And you can use that in order to assign a diagnosis. However, you can see that down here at the bottom, the associated diagnosis has to be done by the provider. So you can code a BMI if the nurse, for instance, has documented what the BMI is based on the patient's height and weight. However, the clinical provider of the service that's going to bill for it and is legally accountable would have to document the patient is obese in order for you to use obesity as a diagnosis. You can't look at the BMI as a coder and say, oh, this BMI is over greater than 30, so the patient's obese. That has to be documented. So, however, these things you can. So somebody can say this patient has a non-pressure ulcer. The medical assistant can tell you the depth, and then you can code it accordingly. So that's a pretty significant change. The reason why they did this is if you're familiar with the proposed rule for the physician's fee schedule with CMS for 2019, they're talking about allowing documentation from other ancillary staff underneath the provider to be used instead of just the provider's documentation. So that's why I think they went this way with this. All right. The next thing is the guideline change. The word with or in should be interpreted as associated with or due to. Now, why don't they just use associated with or due to, if that's what they really mean? I don't know. But I guess maybe in translation from one language to another, I don't know. But so when we're looking at something that says with, it can be associated with or due to, and the same thing with in. So that is a guideline change also. All right, so let's go ahead now and look at the codes. And again, I'm going to move rather quickly because we have a lot of slides to cover. If you have any questions on a particular item, please go ahead and jot that down so that when we get to the end of the conference, we can go through any of the questions you might have. And I can try to answer them for you. I have tried to give you now, I don't have all of the changes. I have the majority of the changes. So, go through your commonly used diagnosis codes and determine whether they've changed or not. The other thing you want to look at is there is those official guidelines. However, in the tabular listing, they have all of the other notes and guidelines related to codes. And so you want to take a look there also. So take your majority, the codes that you use the majority of the time. It's that same, the formula where, you have a certain number of codes that you use more than anything else. It makes up, 80% of what you do. Go ahead and check those in the book when you get your new books. We haven't gotten ours yet. They're actually supposed to ship today. So, and look at those and make sure that you have everything correct. The other thing is, and you can see this on slide number 4, is currently the code C43.1 is a valid code as of today. Beginning October 1st, they are converting it to a parent code, and that's a terminology that ICD-10 uses when we're doing changes. And they have converted C43.1 to a parent code, and now we do have the C43.11 and C43.12 for right and left. So C43.1 is really not, as of October 1st, will not be a valid code anymore. You need to either use the right or the left. Now, I'm going to tell you something else about the information I have in today's conference. I do not have unspecified codes listed. We are not supposed to be using unspecified codes unless we absolutely have to. We are seeing denials on codes that when there is a laterality option, if you use the unspecified or right and left instead of right or left, it's getting denied. We're also seeing if you're using a laterality modifier as well as a laterality diagnosis